Diablo 4, baby! I think I can cover a lot of topics pretty fast. Let's see. Magic Find. The devs said they want to have Magic Find in the game, and I'm very happy about that. I loved Magic Find. But they said they don't want Magic Find to be a power sacrifice, which I don't love. I think that's stupid. Magic Find was an attribute you could get on items that would make monsters you kill have a higher chance to drop magic items. Rares, sets, uniques, and so on. The good stuff. So the trade-off was that you sacrifice some of your powerful gear to put on some Magic Find gear. And that increases the danger, which means that you better be on your game. If you mess up, you're going to get killed easier. You might have less hit recovery, less block, less life, and do less damage. So when they remove the trade-off and just let you have the Magic Find on top of the power, there's nothing for the player to think about. There's no sacrifice, no trade-off. You can't have meaningful gameplay without sacrifice. And that's a common pitfall that's going to keep coming up as I talk about D4, because it's a pattern that I see all over the place. Stat summaries. The items in the BlizzCon beta had attack and defense stats. So basically what they did, they sort of wrapped up the attributes into these two stats, attack and defense. I don't like this at all. This is terrible. This is part of why the gear in Diablo 3 was stupid. You don't have to think about anything. The game does the math for you, and it gives you either a green arrow or a red arrow. So now the player isn't even interacting with his own loot. The game's mediating between the player and the item. This is one of those things that assessing your equipment was actual gameplay, but they don't consider it gameplay, so they think it's okay to just throw it out and remove it. In Diablo 3, they did the same thing with picking up gold. You don't have to click it anymore. Finding waypoints. You don't have to go find waypoints. They'll just be in your path. Potions. You don't have to restock potions. It's just a part of your interface. Organizing your inventory. You don't have to do that anymore either. The inventory is huge, and the items are mostly the same shape. Restocking identification scrolls and town portal scrolls. Those just became part of the interface. The Heraldric Cube became part of the interface. So, each one of these things is a small part of the game, and when you remove enough of them, there isn't much game left. All that's left is the combat, which is what people thought they wanted, until they got it. And now one of the most common complaints about D3 is that it feels like just a big item farm, because that's all you're doing and that's all there really is to do. And I think that's why. I think they removed too much of the game, because they didn't think those things were part of the game, or that they didn't matter. This is why players make bad designers. We're good at identifying what's in our way, but we're not very good at identifying which of those things is making the game better or worse. Instanced loot. This is where everybody gets their own loot. If there are multiple people, we can't see each other's loot on the ground to pick it up or anything. It's private. I think this is stupid too. I don't like this either. For so many reasons. One is that it feels like the game is holding my hand, and I don't want to feel like the game is watching me at all. It breaks the consistency of the world, which ruins immersion. If I can see an item drop, then the person next to me should be able to see the same item drop. There's no in-world reason that he shouldn't see it. Except, of course, that the game is watching me, and the developers who made the game want to hold my hand and make sure that the children can't possibly come into conflict. We don't need a nanny, Blizzard. Thank you. This is pretty common feedback, and I'm afraid that the way they're going to respond to it is to put the loot settings in the hands of the player. And they'll say, well, now you can make the loot settings however you want. So if people have different preferences, they can play however they want. But I don't like that either. For the same reason. It breaks the consistency of the world, because now the world doesn't work the same way everywhere for everyone. It works one way for some people, and one way for other people. And that just really drives a knife through immersion. It reminds us that we're just playing a game. And the whole point of an RPG is to let people play their role, and forget that they're playing a game. If my friends and I can't settle a dispute about how to handle loot, we're not friends, and we shouldn't be playing together anyway. I don't want people to be morally dependent upon the game. This is definitely in the realm of problems that we need to let people learn to solve on their own, or they'll never develop the ability to solve them. I don't think I'm getting at the heart of this. Let me explore this loot thing a bit more. In Diablo 2, the loot system is kind of competitive. Everybody can see everything that drops, and the person with the fastest fingers gets it. Nothing's assigned to or reserved for anybody, which feels pretty bad if you have the slowest fingers. But as a slow person, we still have some options. The first one is to play alone, which everyone will do in some measure, but it's more fun to play with other people. So the second option is to play with friends. So you and your friends can either come to an agreement about how to handle loot, or at least more easily resolve any conflicts that arise, by virtue of already being friends. But I want to make a case for the idea that the system in this iteration isn't completely competitive, not even among strangers, because it introduces a new currency to the game, and I think that currency is trust. If I run into 3 people who are just greedy douchebags, picking up everything faster than I can pick it up, even if it's an upgrade for me and they can't use it, and then I encounter guy number 4, who knows how to share, well, I just learned who I can trust. And I made a friend. Maybe this is a guy I want to play with again. And maybe this is a guy who I want to hunt high-level items with, because I know he's far more likely to share than any of these other guys. From a design point of view, it seems like you have to have that starting position of vulnerability in order for the social economic side of the game to even manifest. Because if I don't need to trust anybody, then I can never learn who I can trust. And then the third option for people who are slow at picking things up is to get faster. Not just because it improves your awareness of the game and your reflexes, but because it actually teaches the people who don't know how to share why knowing how to share is valuable. Because now they're on the receiving end of the unfairness, and they're feeling what you were feeling. It's perfect. The whole situation taught the incompetent player to be more competent, to man up and get better at looting and surviving in a dog-eat-dog environment. And it taught the other player how to share and make friends, in an environment where people know how to share. So when an item drops that is good for him, I can hold on to it, remind him of all the times he failed to share with me, and then share with him and see if he improves. This whole thing is fascinating to me. Emergent Diablo ethics. And then another thing I wanted to mention about the competitive loot kind of ties in with the consistency thing. It's not just that it's a consistent world. It's that it feeds into that sense of the world doesn't care about me. It isn't watching me and changing things to accommodate me. When everybody can see the loot, nobody ever stops to wonder, why does the system work this way? Because it matches with reality that items aren't invisible to certain people. I notice I keep coming back to that the more I think about the differences between D2 and D3. Because the game consistently didn't care about me, or what I was doing, or how I felt about how things worked. It allowed this feeling of isolation and survivalism to manifest. And I think maybe that's the essence of Diablo 2 that's so elusive in this formulaic design environment of hyper-awareness of what we can control. There's all this excitement about how gaming has evolved, and genres have evolved, and gamers have evolved. And I do like the experimentation with what we can do, but I think we could also benefit from inspecting some of our unconscious assumptions about what we should do. What else? Seasons. They're gonna do seasons. I like that. Who doesn't like seasons? Yeah, as long as they don't make them too long or too short. How long is a good season? Maybe a year or 2? I'm very much a one-character kind of guy. Can you tell? They said they want to change up gear a bit for each of the seasons, to just sort of add some variety to the way people play it. Different builds will be better in different seasons. I kind of lean towards I don't like that, but it doesn't seem like a big deal, so. Transmog. They said they're definitely adding Transmog, transmogrification, where you can change the look of your gear without changing the stats on it. Mostly harmless, but again, man, my purest antibodies just reject it. If this isn't what the gear is supposed to look like, don't make the gear look like something it's not supposed to look like. I only want people to look like the gear that they're wearing. Again, it's that consistency of the world thing. I don't get why everyone's so willing to break the consistency of the world and the illusion that makes RPGs so enjoyable, just to play dollhouse with it. I don't care if I look like crap. If I want to look cooler, why shouldn't looking cool come at the cost of the stats on the gear that I'm not wearing? There it is again, man. The dissolving of sacrifice. Like we don't want players to have to sacrifice anything ever. Because sacrifice feels bad, and we don't want anybody to feel bad. It's very infantile to me, which is particularly unsuitable for a franchise like Diablo. Whatever, man, they're gonna do it anyway, so there's no point whining about it. Look and feel. This is a topic I probably have a lot to say about. So, a lot of these are changes that happened in D3, not D4, but they're just carrying them over from D3 to D4, and I don't like it. I like the look and feel of the gameplay. Actually, I like the look and feel of the interface too. It's very nice looking, but that's kind of my problem with it. It's too nice and clean and neat, and very similar to D3, which isn't a bad thing in and of itself, but it does kind of make me worry what other things they're pulling from D3, because I think there's very little to nothing in D3 worth bringing into D4. I know that sounds harsh, but I think it's true. I've played hundreds of hours of D3, and I can't think of anything that I would want to preserve from it into D4. It just isn't the type of game I want D4 to be, in any way except perhaps technologically. So the interfaces, I kind of wish they had kept the D2 interface, but just updated it, upped the resolution, but kept that bold runic look, and the ethereal looking tooltips. I like those better than the paper looking ones. Anyway, the interface is very much not a big deal. I find that interfaces tend to grow on you, to the same degree that the game grows on you. So if the game is good, then I'll probably just come to like the interface too. I hate the hotkeys though. I don't know why they insist on limiting us to 6 hotkeys. The D2 hotkeys were far more sophisticated than this. I think they want to simplify the controls for the console, which seems to be a common thing when they make a game for console. They're constantly trying to simplify things for it. And I think that's part of the source of the contention between PC gamers and console gamers. PC gamers feel like their games are dumbed down for console. Another look and feel choice that I didn't like was legendaries and mythics. They're called uniques, man. Uniques used to be the highest rarity. And then, of course, in Diablo 3, they had to one-up the old developers with legendaries, which is a Warcraft name, not a Diablo name. Warcraft has legendaries. Diablo has uniques. So now we got the Warcraft rarity, overtaking the Diablo rarity, which is so painfully symbolic of what happened to D3, and what seems to be happening to D4. All these Warcraftian decisions are just invading the Diablo franchise, for the worse. Mythic, another Warcraftian name. Those are even better than legendaries. So it's another instance of, let's one-up the old developers. Let's one-up the old game. More is better. That's another consistent philosophy that I see popping up in the design of D4. The barbarian can wield more weapons, the druid does more shapeshifting, the sorceress does more teleporting. The more is better thing is dangerous, especially for a game like this. I think class-based RPGs are about exploring archetypes, and if you keep adding more to an archetype, you don't have an archetype anymore. It gets diluted. A lot of the appeal of playing a druid might have been that choice between am I going to be a werebear or a werewolf. So when you make it so that the player can be both, or worse, that all players are always both, there's no choice to be made and the choice doesn't really matter, because it didn't require a sacrifice. I don't have to sacrifice being a bear in order to be a wolf, or vice versa. So it runs the risk of what we're left with is a formless bear-wolf hybrid thing. I think distinguishing these archetypes might be the most important design thing that you have to get right in a game like this. And it's a mistake that I see a bit in Diablo 3. For example, I like the Witch Doctor a lot. The whole Caribbean Witch Doctor Obi-Man vibe. But if you think about it, it's kind of just an offshoot of the mage class, of the sorceress. So rather than having another class, it might have been possible to take everything that the Witch Doctor is and put it into the sorcerer class, to really expand on that archetype and allow people to explore in it more. I'm not sure if all of that holds up. It's a new idea to me, and I have to think about it more. But it does seem to hold up, because it's pretty easy to come up with examples of archetypes that nobody cares about. For example, a werewolf fire mage. Sounds kind of interesting, right? But I've never thought I wish I could make a werewolf fire mage. What's the point of transforming into a werewolf if I'm just going to cast magic anyway? The archetypes contradict each other like that, and that's how you can come up with them. You just think of typal contradictions and put them together. Which I think is how you can tell these archetypes are ancient, because we can agree on what the contradictions are for the most part. So then the question is, why do we agree? Why do we think those are contradictions? Who's deciding that? It's something in us. Okay, that was a lot of topics. I'm out.
This place actually distorts reality.